Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. As you can see, my team certainly did, and we will touch on that, of course, in the video. I'm really excited for this video, not just because I get to talk about my 111 points, but because of the irony following on from my last transfer plan section. In the team selection video I posted a few days ago, I discussed how I was settled on my most concrete transfer plans yet, and then one event on Saturday evening completely changes all of it, and I have an entirely new transfer plans, which I look forward to sharing with you, and we'll go through some analysis as well. Today, I will have you specific player insights, a game week review, match analysis on 5 of the games that occurred this weekend, as well as transfer plans. If you are new around here, do subscribe. Hopefully, you can cash in on some of the luck that not only I've been having, but the comment section is filled with people flying currently. And if you are old around here and you are one of the 37.3% of viewers who have been watching regularly but not subscribed, I would be greatly appreciative in our push to 6,000 if you could do so. But without anything else needing to be said, let's hop into the video. If memory serves correct, I titled the goalkeeper section in my team selection video Sanchez Supremacy because I was somewhat expectant of a return. I thought the grounds and conditions were certainly there for him to reward me with my patience and trust from the Game Week 12 wildcard selection, and he has certainly done that. Originally, I was looking at the Cell 7 pointer following their trip away to Brentford, and I was like, okay, you know what, maybe I should have just stuck there. But following on from the late leak of points last week through Brian Mbeumo's goal, he this time manages to make some really good saves throughout the game to lock in a 9-pointer. And I owe him some credit. I haven't exactly been too complimentary of him as a goalkeeper in the past, but in the last 2 games, he's definitely saved us, and he's very deserving of these points. I thought overall we were quite solid. They definitely had a few moments in the game. Everton, I think that's somewhat understandable considering they're at home and the type of place it is to go, and the weather conditions as well. I didn't think really helped us when we're trying to dominate them and unlock them, right? So they caught us a few times on transitions, had a few moments here or there, few bits of quality, but he was the standard every single time. And I'm really looking forward to now owning him going forward because I feel a lot more security around his place. Okay, fine, he might get benched for a game, but at least when he plays, I know that there's a level of performance and potentially a consistent level of performance, which we haven't seen so far from him, which has maybe now been unlocked through Maresca's faith and patience. It just shows what a bit of faith from another person can do. So yeah, absolutely delighted with that, and it was great to get that. In terms of the game week analysis, I do it at random points throughout the team review. I thought I'd do it now. I mean, the best game week of my season by an absolute country mile, which coincides with the membership community launch. I wouldn't say that's a coincidence. 109 points, up about 101k to 39k. And considering we used the wildcard late, I've got a high team value. The squad's in a really good place. I had 2 free transfers coming into game week 18. Really bullish on what I could do, and it should be interesting to see how things unfold. But for now, let's move on to the defense. There seems to be a recurring theme as of late where the defense largely performs exactly as to my expectations prior to the game week. 14 and 15, I was not bullish in the slightest. I was very bearish, I guess you could say, and they returned 1 and 2 points respectively. Game week 17, game week 16, I'm certainly more expecting of some points. They return, and then this week, a full house, I would say. I know Gabriel only got 4 points, but he still gets a return, and that means that I get a full house. Robinson taken out of the bonus points. He was on for 3, and then they just notched him down to 2, and after the game had concluded, he goes down to 6. And I was thinking about this, and whilst I didn't really care too much, it's actually quite a big deal, because if you look at the difference between 2 and 4, big difference, at least in the way you perceive it, and same between 6 and 4. I feel like we perceive 6 and 8 slightly different because you're already happy getting a 6-point return, and that's really what you want from defenders week in, week out, clean sheets, right? And everything else is a bonus. But yeah, those 2 points to lose at the end, especially by 1 BPS on the system, is quite a bit. On the contrary, on the complete opposite side, whilst it says Lewis Hall's got a 6-pointer there, I should have changed that. He's actually got a 7-pointer, which is what took me to 111 points, following a very late change in the bonus system. So as they say, swings and roundabouts. Could have got an attacking return. Put a beautiful ball in for Bruno Guimaraes, which he headed just wide of the post. Should have scored. Could have scored, probably should have scored. And, you know, on another day, he gets those 3, maybe another bonus point as well, and he finishes on 11 points. But absolutely delighted with the upturn in his performances in terms of a footballing standpoint, but also what he's done for my FPL side. 22 points in the last week, averaging 11 apiece. Absolutely wonderful. And with Robinson's longevity as well, and the fact you'll see who my new defender is, the defense is looking super strong. High upside, good fixtures, good fundamentals, good expected minutes. Absolutely loving it. And Gabriel gets a very fortunate assist for Gabriel Jesus hits his calf, rolls back, and he slams it in. But just the best defender in the game. I mean, I know Ole Aina has got more points than him now, and I know Ashley Young's breathing down his neck. He's been so consistent, especially at his price, and considering basically no one owns him, who's engaged at least. But could have had another goal against Palace, hits the bar, probably should keep it down. On another day, he gets that goal, plus a bonus point as well for his efforts. But yeah, really, really happy with the defense. And for the first time, I would say this season, especially considering the transfer I made, I think it's solid. And I really, really, really don't want to touch it for at least 5 to 6 weeks. There is only one place for me to start when it comes to this midfield, and it is not Mohamed Salah, because he didn't do as much for my rank as the man on the left did, Morgan Rogers. You would have seen my solving your problems video, well, many in that, and you would have seen I made a late change because I didn't like the justification I provided and the analysis I provided for starting João Pedro over him. I thought it was wishy-washy. I thought it lacked some sense of solidity and a real foundation to why I was doing it. I was resting on the fact that he has penalties, but realistically, how many penalties are you going to get in a season, and what's the probability of that happening in one game? I was resting on the fact that it was Manchester City, not the Manchester City of now, though, and maybe the name of it as well, and risk aversion as well. But thankfully, I got my head to the right place and made what I thought was the right decision, and it really pays off. He could have had more. He was really, really good throughout the game. And in the match analysis section on Aston Villa, we will wax lyrical about them, and rightfully so. But he was brilliant. He looked such a threat. Back on his preferred left side as well. Changes the system, which we'll speak about as well, going to a back four. And he was just phenomenal. He was a threat in transition. And some of the carries are so good. And he can basically hold anyone off. He is so strong, especially for his age. So going forward, I'm just not selling him. Especially when you consider that United, they were on a bit of a high. They win the Manchester derby, but then they lose away to Spurs. Okay, fine, but Ahmed comes out of it with a brilliant performance, a goal and assist off the bench, but then another 3-0 loss to Bournemouth. And it's just like, okay, I might just leave United alone. And it would be very much a luxury transfer, which I don't have the luxury of making. And to be honest, I don't think there's a single person in the world right now who has a luxury to make, even if they have 4 to 5 frees, because of how useful they will be down the line and how delicate things are at the moment. Jared Bowen, similar to Lewis Hall, will be an unsung hero because they got their points on Saturday and it won't be Hall's, but I'll do my best to make sure that's not the case. Gets an assist and a bonus point, which 6 always looks a lot better than 5, I feel like, when it comes to FPL. I don't know what it is about it. And yeah, honestly, that's the one game that I have not watched a single bit of. So there'll be no match analysis on that. I don't really have much to discuss. Obviously, the Sunday 2 o'clock games as well, because you can only watch one at a time. But yeah, I don't really have much to say about it. It was a good finish by Kudus, and I appreciate the assist. But what I would say is, since bringing him in, averaging 5.5 points a game, which would put you around 209 points, I believe, for the season, if you were to continue that rate. Really good. At that price, okay, fine, Brian Mbeumo has outscored him in that time period, but I couldn't have known that, right? And I can only make what I think is the best decision, capitalize on the fixtures and trust one of the most solid players in the game, especially when you take into account price. So he gets Southampton away, and he'll probably be leaving, but as we express in transfer plans, maybe not. We'll see. We'll come to Salah last. Saka, obviously injured, and there'll be a huge talking point for so many throughout the week because he's up to like 80% EO. So millions of transfers out, I will imagine, probably 1 million plus. And we will get onto his replacements, and I will go into that in some depth in everything you need to know. And this video is more related to my team and my transfer plans. Palmer, I didn't really have many opportunities to return apart from one in the first half where he shoots wide and one when Nicholas Jackson probably should score, albeit I think it was a difficult chance, harder than people made it out to be, and I thought it was a very good save from Jordan Pickford as well. I think given the analysis that we did beforehand, we weren't necessarily expecting of a Palmer Hall, and whatever came was a bonus, and you actually wanted him to blank, especially if you want a Chelsea fan, because his EO was above 100%. And then we just come on to the guy who is an absolute force of nature and a freak in the best possible way. 42 points. I was so prepared to give a little speech on why I think it's okay that I chose to captain Salah over Alexander Isak, because obviously he scored a hat-trick. And I know I would have talked a lot of you out of it following the section on solving your problems. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to address this, and I'm stand by that decision. But thankfully now, I won't have to do that because the guy puts up a 21-pointer. We'll discuss it more in the match analysis section. But yeah, if you don't own this guy, it's been a rough season, and especially with the fixture run coming up, I would say get him in sooner rather than. Like I mentioned, I haven't really caught up with the West Ham Brighton game, so I can't talk about João Pedro's 2-pointer on the bench, albeit when I did see that Dunk's got an assist, I was like, there's no way I put this much faith in you, and then you're going to return like a Hall on the bench the 1 week I bench you, or the second week I bench you. But he only gets a 5-pointer, and thankfully Bowen outscores him, and so does the rest of the defense. Moving on to the other two forwards. Jackson was, I wouldn't say unfortunate not to get a return, because realistically it's his fault. He has one big chance which he missed, the one I discussed previously, and then one very big chance where he really should have scored from the corner. Reacts slightly late and puts it onto the post as opposed to putting it in the back of the net. He would score that, I would say, 8 times out of 10. So, you know, it happens. On another day he returns. It's pretty similar to Brentford, where he missed a big chance, except against Brentford. He made up for it with a stupidly good finish. Not the case, and it's okay. The only thing I'm thinking about him is Enzo Maresca has spoken about the maturity of the side, considering they're so young. And if we do start to tail off just a little bit, right, considering he's going slightly back to the Jackson that misses a few chances, the price and what he blocks, is there ever an opportunity for me to move him out, say when people are maybe even bringing him in as a part of a slightly risky but upside play, if anyone else is to present themselves, like a Gabriel Jesus, who just maybe takes the number 9 spot and hits brilliant form. As an example, I'm open to it at least, even though I am really looking to keep free transfers, roll and roll and roll. Also, there's that potential rotation coming up as well, following the back of not the best game. So maybe there's some validity to that argument. Alexander Isak, he looks so sharp at the moment. Discuss it a little bit more in the match analysis section. But what I was so surprised to see is I go online and I see his effective ownership at sub 50%. I'm thinking, oh, away at Ipswich, I'm surprised, especially considering the hype around him, right? So to get a 17-pointer and to get that much of a chunk going towards your rank in a positive manner, absolutely fantastic. Looks really sharp, and we'll discuss Newcastle more in the match analysis section. But like I said, yeah, overall the team just performs superbly well this week, averaging 10 points a piece and some 10 point 10 point. Yeah, just a really, really, really good week. And we will go on to the next. But now let's go on to the match analysis section and then transfer plans. I genuinely was going to go on to the match analysis section. Then I flicked through and realized that this is the next slide. Just a short section for people who are considering joining. Happy to put you in touch if they are willing with someone who's already in the group so you can get some feedback on it. And I assure you, you have my word, I will not influence what they say. Like I said, especially with the WhatsApp community group, I really didn't do this solely for the money. I'm not going to act and sit like I don't care about the money, because would I do it for free? No, probably not. But there are a lot of benefits which can be had from it. A lot of guys have been very open in there about a variety of things, and I think it certainly helped a lot of people. So if you would like to join the group, these are all the benefits on offer. You can join as a gold member if you just like to support the channel, diamond member if you would like some more. But again, considering it's a fresh launch, considering it's new, I thought I would present the opportunity to you, considering at least someone has joined every single day since the launch. Lastly, if you are in an area or a country which YouTube members doesn't really facilitate, you can still get in. Just drop me an email, drop me a DM on an X, and I will sort it with you. Someone else did that. Their country didn't facilitate joining Trinidad and Tobago, but we just sorted something out over a few emails. And then he's now in the group and enjoying it. So if any of you are in that position, please don't feel like there's a barrier to entry. Absolutely not. For those of you who will watch regularly, you will know the routine is largely to put the Super Sunday fixtures at the end. But there was just so much to discuss. It's fresh on my mind, and I thoroughly enjoyed the game. So I thought I would give you a bit of analysis on Spurs Liverpool first. And Mo, Merry Christmas for us captainers. Right. We have discussed in the past what could be an optimal way in which to approach your press against Liverpool. And we largely settled on the fact that the best way was actually not to go man-to-man to the centre-backs, given their quality on the ball and their press resistance, but rather to jump the full-backs and Gravenberch as soon as they are to receive. Fulham did it to a level of success that I would say not many have had, and Newcastle did it, again, to a level of success that not many have had, and it is really a recently adopted approach amongst the Premier League teams, and we spoke about it before the Newcastle game. Spurs did not do that. They did what we would say, or I've said on this channel, is, in my opinion, the least optimal approach, to go man-to-man to their centre-back. And there's a few reasons. One, as I discussed, Van Dijk, Gomez, good on the ball, press resistant, etc. But the other thing is, there has to be this certain level of synchronicity to ensure that when the ball gets played into the pivot as well, you are timing the press at the exact same time as the first line of press is jumping. And that's not going to happen, even if it's by a millisecond, because you haven't got this like telepathic understanding, which is why I tweeted out that I think teams introducing some form of telepathic course within their players would be very useful. But that's a discussion for another day and just my perspective on football. Maybe something we can have in the group chat, right? There'll always be that split second, which means that the guy in the pivot, Gravenberch, who's been absolutely brilliant receiving that, will always have another second, or even if it's a split second. He'll you on the half turn, almost play a bounce pass back into the other centre-back, So manipulate the angle. And the thing is, these guys work on build-up so much throughout the week, right? So they have such a good understanding of it, not just from an intellectual side, but an innate understanding of it. They just know what to do. It's unconscious. And therefore, your press, it will get played out of. And I remember one sequence in the first half where Gravenberch ended up undercooking the pass slightly to Trent, and the weight of pass, just a slight weight of pass being wrong, spoiled the entire attack, I would say, even though it still turned into a good one. And that's how important your way to pass and timing of release is. But that's another thing. And they played through, and they were through after like a few passes. Okay, they had a lot of distance to cover, but they were going to do that, especially with how vertical they were being there. So I think when you give Liverpool that type of scenario, you're just playing into their hands with the players they have, and they will just destroy you. And they did so many times to Spurs. They could have scored so many times from it. That's that. The Liverpool second goal is one of my favorite goals this season, and I genuinely was applauding. It was a brilliant goal. They have their 4-2 build, but so high up the pitch, right? Which isn't particularly like usual. For example, like a lot of teams build with a 3-2, but they build with a 3-2 when they're deep, and then it's harder for them to sustain that when they're higher up the pitch. They definitely go maybe a little bit wider to give themselves more options and a few more men in the midfield. But Liverpool keep their shape, and Diaz pulls into an 8-like zone on the left-hand side, similar to what Havertz does or has done when he's played at 9 for Arsenal. But the difference is they're number 10, and in this system, it's more of a 10 as opposed to an 8 where they have Odegaard. This 10 is Szoboszlai. He's not Odegaard, and they have completely different skill sets, right? Not completely different, but very, very different skill sets. So he can occupy, and one of the reasons is due to his level of physicality. He can occupy the space in between the nines, right? Because if they are to get really physical with him, he can deal with it. And he almost acts like a bounce pass again. The ball goes into him, plays it to Diaz, and they work a move, and it is a beautiful move. And okay, fine, the cross was a great cross, and the header that fell to McAllister was a little bit lucky, but the setup was absolutely magnificent, and that a lot of that had to do with the coaching. So I was so impressed. Moving on to Szoboszlai, playing in this hybrid 9/10 role. He was unbelievable today, and I saw a tweet said that this was his best performance in a Liverpool shirt. And whilst the conditions were certainly somewhat optimal for him to produce a performance like this, he still has to go and do it right, and it was so good, and that's the analysis there. Him just occupying those 9-like zones, Diaz pulling, the fluidity that's there, the combinations on offer to them and then to the rest of the side. And I think it's Liverpool's 4th or 5th goal where they facilitate it again through their build-up, and they hurt Spurs again by scoring. It was just absolutely fantastic. And this is what I would like to see, players being maximized and just utilizing like a few tweaks and coaching and system to get this out of them, right? Because don't get me wrong, it's so much about the players you have, but you can do so much from a coaching standpoint, at least in my opinion. The first Spurs goal was interesting because you see in the replay where they have like a wide angle replay that Gravenberch was really far like wide on the right, and it was McAllister receiving in a single pivot, and then he gets dispossessed. And it just kind of showed how good Gravenberch's been, even in like a 4-1 build when Liverpool have done that at times, because they alternate between a 4-1, 4-2 build, and how good he's been in receiving there. So just as an example, if he is to get injured, and touch wood that he doesn't, that would be a big loss for them, because they haven't really got someone who can do the same job that he's doing in there. And Salah and Trent. One thing I noticed really early on, I was like, oh, this is a Salah of old. This reminds me of Jurgen Klopp-like position, because he wasn't that wide. He was narrow and he was higher. And he was looking to constantly exploit the space behind the last line, and in those transitional moments, really be on the end of it and in a better position to start with. And that makes sense given given Spurs' approach. But I like to at least see the adaptability and the innovation from slots in which to do that. And he was devastating today. Same with Trent. I thought he was a little bit higher, at least in the first half, than you usually see him in this particular Liverpool side, and a little bit wider, which I think is good for him. And you see the first goal, right? And we've spoken about this. In those wider zones, he gets there. Absolute machine. And he would be on everyone's wish list if it wasn't for the role he's been playing previously this season, and to an extent, the price. But yeah, there's a lot more we could speak about, but I really want to speak about the Spurs press, the Liverpool coaching, and the usage of Szoboszlai and how good it was. We could wax lyrical about Mo and Diaz, who was brilliant today, and Trent, and even the defense. Okay, they're fine. They shipped 3, but they were pretty solid. But I think those were the main points, and we can move on to the next. Thank you very much, Morgan. I appreciate you. City went with one of their older approaches, and one which has been very successful for them in the past. And they've used a lot of different systems in recent games. They used Diamond against Palace. They used a different one against Forest, where you had Grealish in the middle. They used a different one against United, where I'm going to call it like a 2-2-2 build, when it was Diaz, Walker, Guardiola, Gundo, and then like Nunes and De Bruyne, like in these wide areas. And then today they go back to something that's been so successful for them, and something that worked for them when Gundo was in that left centre mid role, the 3-2-5. Now, It didn't work this time, I would say. And one thing that I was surprised at was Villa's press. It's very traditional in modern day football to set up in a 4-4-2 deep block specifically. But as I will allude to when I come on to Everton, teams are starting to gear away from that and starting to find different solutions because it has been somewhat figured out. And you would have seen a lot of the teams destroy those 4-4-2 deep blocks, right? So Villa actually go 4-4. At times, it's like a 4-3-3 when John McGinn pushes up a little bit. But those were only for certain situations. And I imagine there were triggers for that, which maybe we don't need to go into too much. But largely, it's a 44 with very, very little space between the lines. And the two are Anana and Kamara. That makes it so difficult, right? Because, okay, fine, you get a millisecond in there. You've got two monsters, two superior athletes straight on you, especially in Anana, right? And City's 3-2-5 was rigid. It was very much of the Van Gaal mode. And some of you who would have read zonal marking by Michael Cox will understand what I mean when his system, Van Gaal's, was he had a systematic philosophy whereby players don't vacate their positions too much. He doesn't want to see too much innovation, more so automation, and he doesn't really encourage too much fluidity between the positions, whereas someone like Johan Cruyff did, for example, right? And against the block this compact, when you're not moving the ball, I would say in the way required. Okay, fine, they hit the switches into Grealish, which worked, and it was good, and that's one of the best ways to break down a deeper block, switch it, because you're meant to shift your block side to side, and the quicker you can shift the ball, if you can shift it faster than the block, you can find pockets of space, right? But they didn't really do that, and that tempo in their passing wasn't really there, and I thought Villa did a brilliant job of making it very difficult. And without those rotations, without those movements, and I've seen someone else speak about this as well earlier in the season, it's very difficult to break these type of guys down. And yeah, that's what I mean. Makes a difficult problem. And like I spoke about earlier, the minimal space between the lines, even when Gundo or Foden were to receive, hard, right? Because you've got Anana and Kamara. I don't think you can blame the transition solely on Pep. And that's one of the reasons why they've lost games and where they've looked so susceptible. They don't have a superior athlete at number 6 who has a huge dueling capacity in someone like Moises Caicedo, who was unreal, especially in the first half by today. Rico Lewis, and I mean this with its utmost respect, is not the type of player you want at fullback to protect against these transitions. And for example, Rodgers on his side gave him a hard time, and it's understandable given the physical mismatch. You have John Stones, who's also declining levels of physicality, so your form of protection against that isn't really there in abundance. So I don't think you can blame him entirely for it. Okay, fine, he could play a system, for example, with like Grealish in the middle, which he did towards the end of the game, which increases retention. So you face less transitions, yeah, but you can't blame it all on him. And moving on to Villa, from an attacking standpoint and a more general standpoint, their best performance this season by miles. And I've watched quite a bit of Aston Villa this year. If you watched the game, you wouldn't have been able to keep Tielemans out of your ears because the commentator was waxing lyrical consistently, and fairly so, right? He was absolutely brilliant. But so was Rodgers. Some of the carries were so impressive. I remember he picks up one around the 70th minute and bounces off 4 players. Kulusevski did that as well today. I thought Kulusevski's demonstration of how strong his body today was really impressive. But Rodgers did that many a time. His decision making was really good. The passing in general, just like simple things, were really good. John Duran looked like a big problem to deal with. I thought this was one of John McGinn's better games as well. I thought the defense was solid. I could just go on and on, but there's kind of no point. They were just very, very good. And I like the fact that like they found some flexibility. Okay, they found a 3-back system, which worked for a little bit of time, at least in one game. And now they found like maybe a 4-2-4, 4-4-2, which worked well as well, which they've used in the past, but not, I would say, in this manner. And they adjust because it's Manchester City, and they know that the other team's going to dominate the ball. But yeah, overall, really, really impressed by Villa. Now, I don't have as much team analysis on this game, even though I watched all of it. I didn't pick up, for whatever reason, maybe my mind was just drawing blanks. I touch on Odegaard here because I know some of you will see the Ipswich home fixture, you will see the price, you will see the fact that Saka's out, and think of him as a replacement. I don't like it. And one of the reasons for that, and there's a lot of reasons, I'll discuss this in everything you need to know, is there was just a lot of second phase work, especially when it's a midfield of Havertz, Partey, and Odegaard. It won't be that again because Rice is back, so maybe you have Rice at the base, but I still expect him to do more when the left eight is Havertz and he's going to push on, almost like at times playing this, like, not just an 8, but also second striker type role, and really occupying those areas. And I don't think you want that when you're paying so much for a midfielder. It's a lot to pay, especially in the current climate. No Rice to Marino means their ability to control against, I guess, defensive transitions was not as good. Saar definitely caused them some problems. Palace in general caused them some problems. Mateta looked a threat, not just because of his level of physicality, but also how good he is on the ball. So impressed by Lewis Skelly. First time I watched him play properly. And playing as an inverted fullback, you have to demonstrate a wide variety of things. And the type of actions you complete can really vary. Again, you have to compete defensive ones in wide areas, but maybe you have to compete in duels in tighter areas where the usage of the body is somewhat different. You receive at a variety of different angles in a different type of way consistently, and so on, right? But he was comfortable in pretty much everything. I thought the body looked so strong as well, and Jamie Carragher spoke about that on commentary as well. And not only that, but he seemed very calm, very composed, very secure in himself. That's the aura that I got from him. And I think at his age, that's very, very impressive. The fact that Arteta's trusted him at such a young age to play away to Palace is not easy. 5:30 under the lights, televised, is not an easy place to go. And he does a fantastic job, I would say, for one of his first games in the first team. So yeah, brilliant. Going forward, I know some of you will be considering Jesus, and he's not in my transfer plan, but I thought I'd touch against him on him. One thing is when Havertz does play this left 8 role, as I alluded to, I think against the teams that are slightly less compact, because Jesus has this tendency to drop in, Havertz could make a lot of like last line runs. And for example, the goal they scored came from Havertz's anticipation to go beyond the last line, and just follow in when Jesus just pulled slightly and then got the header as well. So I think against teams that lack compactness and allow them to do that, this duo could profit quite well. Now, I caught a little bit of the Brentford-Nottingham Forest game, but not enough for me to really speak about it in any depth. I thought Johan Wissa looked threatening yet again. I would really like to own him and Chris Wood at some point this season because they present such excellent value. And if I do get the opportunity and it looks good, I'll be all over that. Forest pretty solid against defensively, and Mbeumo still looked a threat, I would say, even in this wider role. He's just so consistent with the level of actions he's performing, especially the attacking ones in the final third, that I think his likelihood of generating returns, even from a lowest volume compared to other players, is just so much higher. So I'd be somewhat comfortable holding him if you've got other fights elsewhere, and you will with the Saka injury, right? Everton, I thought were really impressive. I thought the performance against Arsenal was good. I didn't think it was great, and I think Arsenal should have put them away. But today, okay, fine, Jackson should have done better on a couple of chances. But outside of that, there wasn't that much. We really did not have that much. And their 4-5-1 was very, very impressive. It's so compact in the middle. Again, similar to Villa, really little space between the lines. Got the physical profiles needed in those 3 spots to make it very difficult anyway. And then obviously you've got a very physical and competent centre-back pairing as well. Okay, so a lot of similarities between the game against with Aston Villa, Manchester City, and here with Everton and Chelsea. One thing I would say, though, is, okay, fine, they caught us a few times on transition. They had a few chances, but in general, they have so few outs because in DA on one side and Jack Harrison on the other, they aren't these type of players that are, I would say, brilliant large distance carriers. They're not like a Dharma where you can just release them into space and they're really going to take that ball far for you. And I think Everton need that considering what Calvert-Lewin has to do. He's so isolated up top. And when he gets any form of service, it's largely just in the form of long balls. And okay, fine, maybe he wins one and brings it down. But then you need these type of physical profiles to latch onto it and really continue to play from there. The game against Fulham is the best example from this season as well. It gets absolutely dominated physically. And because they don't have the necessary physical profiles to compete against Fulham's, they don't really hurt them at all throughout the game. So I think that's something for Dyche to think about. But I guess who does he play there, right? His hands are kind of tied because it's very much dependent on the players you have. Maybe you could tweak the system slightly, but you would definitely be giving up some of that, some of the defensive capabilities your side currently boasts. In terms of Chelsea, for me, I didn't love the left-hand side dynamics. I think against like a block like this, having a highly associative winger on the left-hand side is fine, right? I have no issue with that. But then I do think you need I described it as a door breaker in the community type of left centre mid. A guy to take responsibility, a guy who wants the ball and wants to be performing those final actions, playing that really threatening, penetrating type of pass to unlock the defense or wanting to shift and shoot, right? And Enzo's not that type of player. That's fine. It's not his fault. Also, Gusto was really high up today. Like at times it was Palmer pulling onto the right side when we were in a diamond and Gusto in the 10. So we didn't really have that door breaker type of player. I think we kind of need that when you have a highly associative winger because you know that their 1v1 threat isn't going to be anywhere near as great. I would have liked to see Neto move to the left, who I thought he was one of the better players today. I thought he had a good game. And then Madueke on the right as well. But you know, Everton always a tough place to go. As much as I would have liked the win, I can appreciate it's not the worst point in the world and we'll probably drop worse points in the future. Ipswich versus Newcastle, not too much to say apart from the fact that 1, Alexander Isak looks very sharp. 2, we're going to reinforce it again. the dynamics that Eddie Howe's now created in the side, not just the left-hand side dynamics, but also with the way Bruno G is playing, really good. And the positions he's taking up, really good. And Newcastle look like they're kicking on now. Jacob Murphy on that right-hand side has been brilliant. That shot was so powerful. And the assist was absolutely magnificent as well. And I imagine he would have got the headlines if it wasn't for an Isak hat-trick. If you don't own Alexander Isak, I was actually thinking about it, right? And considering what Villa have showcased recently in the last 3 games, as opposed to being a side who are certainly susceptible to being exploited by a player like Alexander Isak, I wouldn't say they're like that anymore. And I don't think it's the worst spot in the world to avoid for 2 weeks, maybe if you've got other fights elsewhere, when you've got Man United after. And I haven't watched any of the game, but still, Man United aren't a side that you're going to be able to break down consistently, at least I don't think so, from what I've seen so far. So I don't mind fading him for 2 weeks if you've got issues elsewhere. And who knows, maybe Cunha doesn't get a ban and you can just keep the guy rolling with another 9-pointer. That's so well to get 3 bonus, by the way. It just shows how good of an asset he is. And yeah, I think Ipswich needs to be a little bit more compact. I've seen that a few times this season. I think it would certainly help them if they were just to take that approach and concede a little bit of territory and maybe attacking opportunities throughout the game. But they also didn't have Liam Delap, who's one of their outs and a hugely important player for them. So yeah, that's the match analysis on these 2 games. Now let's go on to transfer plans. In the making of my last 2 videos for Gameweek 17's content, I expressed my preference to have the ability to justifiably bring in Phil Foden into my side. I then expressed it again on X when he scored, not really because he scored, because I just wanted him prior. And then the event happens where Saka gets injured and it essentially facilitates the move in what I would say is the best way possible. Obviously, I didn't want Saka to get injured. I'm purely speaking about it in terms of my team and FPL, because realistically, was I ever taking Saka out for Ipswich at home? Absolutely not. And did I have a route to Phil Foden? At least not in 18. No, certainly not. Maybe in 19, but even then it was difficult. But I have been presented with it, and I have already made the move. In the title, you will see that I made 2 moves, 2 differential ones, and he was the first, and Hosko Gvardiol was the second. Now, I will go into real depth on the analysis of the player when I talk about the Saka replacements and everything you need to know, which you will have tomorrow, and for some of you, you will have today, depending on the time you are watching it, and likewise with Hosko Gvardiol. But to sum it up, 1, and this isn't the reason for the selection, but it's a factor. 1, it's a lot of what I would call upside exploitation. It's almost free risk. Over those 5 games, it's absolutely brilliant as a fixture set from an attacking standpoint, okay? And I don't look at any of the other options and think, I really want you, and you've got great fixtures and great fundamentals. The only player who I would say has great fixtures is Phil Foden, okay? And I think that goal in the last minute is just something to kickstart a bit of momentum. Okay, fine. In general, City were pretty poor, and Everton have just displayed twice in back-to-back weeks very competent defensive performances. So you'll say what will change against City, for City, against them, especially when City have been worse than Arsenal and Chelsea. And I don't really need them to play well. All I need is Phil Foden, literally, to be in that right-hand side pocket, get the ball, turn, and shoot. Okay? Because he's got such brilliant ball striking from outside the box. As long as he's in the positions, and we've expressed the importance of zonal occupancy on this channel, that's fine. That's a fantastic avenue to point, and he's got some set pieces as well. And City are definitely a threat from set pieces. And to maximize my upside, what can I pair that with? Their biggest goal threat from set pieces, Hosko Gvardiol. Now, again, that is not the reason I bought him, but I like the security in the sense that I just get to play him week on week on week with the fixtures, especially when Lewis Halls aren't too good in this period. I get a lot of attacking upside, especially if he is to play at left back. And yeah, it's a nice differential play as well. So I think there's value to be had in isolation when looking at the picks, but also relative to the rest of the field, because people are going other places. Odegaard, Bruno, Maddison. I personally just don't like any of those picks. But that, of course, changes my transfer plans entirely. So now what happens? Well, this week, and as I've expressed, I've already done it. Now, why did I already do it? Well, Dunk was predicted to drop last night, and I wouldn't have been able to afford the moves, at least not like Gvardiol one, and I wanted him. If I got Foden, I really wanted Gvardiol as well, because I wanted to go in with both feet, and I thought they can both return in the same type of game, and I could hit them as a combination. And I really wanted to expose myself to that upside, as opposed to just getting Munoz. The other thing about Munoz, and I'll come back to why I made the transfer, the other thing about Munoz is the fixture in 20 is not great, right? It's Chelsea, and Gvardiol has a better fixture that week. Even this week, he has Everton at home, where Munoz has Bournemouth away, and I think it's like in 22, Gvardiol has Ipswich, and Munoz has a worse fixture as well. So realistically, I'm getting better fixtures from Gvardiol as well, and I would say still, for me, a better defense, although I might be chancing my luck slightly, considering what we've seen recently. And going back to the point, I would have been off by 0.1, and I'm fine. The deadline's on Thursday. Not too much to change. City have already played. They played ages ago. We didn't get any leaks of any injuries. They seem fine. Okay, I'm just going to play. And I think Phil Foden's expected minutes are fine. The reason I say that is if De Bruyne and him are going to play on the same side, and De Bruyne is going to play that type of role against Man United, and Phil Foden will be the 10, I think he's good for expected minutes, especially after his goal. Just a bit of momentum. Game week 19. So I will probably sell Jared Bowen to Ismail Sarr, who's looked great as of late. And the expected minutes have been there for a while, which I did not realize initially. For that fixture run, I'll get Southampton away from Bowen in 18, and from the same spot, I will get Southampton at home for Sarr in 19. The only thing is, I would quite like to have more free transfers going down the line, and I don't think Bowen at home to Liverpool is that bad, considering Konate won't be there. And the type of player he is, he has the capabilities to return against everyone. He's somewhat fixture-proof. He really is. Okay, fine, he can't access the same ceiling as other players in these really difficult fixtures, like a Salah, for example, the big game slayer. But he's certainly in the upper echelons of players who can do that for all of the player base in general. So maybe I keep him and take a transfer and assess and take the information as well going into 20. Maybe not, right? Maybe I'll just take the upside of Munoz of Sarr in game week 19 and hold him for a very long time because Palace's fixture run from 19 does get pretty good. Munoz will have to wait. He'll likely be the Guardiola replacement when I sell Guardiola when they had that really tough fixture in like 3 for Manchester City. And then from game week 19, from game week 19, I am really just looking to roll and roll and roll because the defense looks super solid. The attack could be a bit better in terms of the fixture set it has, but it's not bad, right? Like Rodgers and João Pedro just go through a little bit of a rough patch at times, but overall it's okay. And honestly, the team looks strong. And with the differentials I have and the team place I'm in, I'm looking forward to see what they can do next week and in the coming week. And for the rest, that is all she wrote for this video, ladies and gentlemen. I certainly enjoyed that one. I guess it helps when you have a good game week, but also because I enjoyed the match analysis section in that part and the flavor of the transfer plans being quite spicy. Now, if you have questions that you would like answered for everything you need to know, even if it's some of the more abstract concepts, please do drop them in the comments. Due to the schedule, there'll be a far shorter turnaround in the time that I'm filming my next video. It will be done tomorrow afternoon so that you can have it by tomorrow evening-ish. And I would essentially love to be able to answer your questions in the most accurate way possible and in the way that's most suitable to helping you. So please do that. Now, if you did enjoy the video, I would appreciate if you could drop a like on it. Maybe we'll hit 300 likes on this video. Who knows? And if you are new around here, if you are part of the 37.3% who watch regularly but have not subscribed, then consider doing so as we push to 6,000 subscribers. I hope you had a great game week. I hope you had a great weekend. And I shall see you very, very, very soon. Potentially even today for some of you, or even in a few hours due to the short turnaround. Until then, have a great day and goodbye.